Good day and welcome back into the garden. If you watched last night, we had Dr.MaggieDolittle and Wallace the Wonder Dog. I will keep you apprised if Wallace gets a different forever home or if he's a foster fail and ends up staying with Katrina. I got some interesting comments, kind of both ways, about what people thought should happen. It's really her choice and Wallace's choice at the end of the day. Uh, anyway, that was kind of our adventure into being around a pet psychic. I also want to do a big shout out today to Kim from Intuitiview because she interviewed me a week ago and it ended up going on for 2.5 hours, mostly because halfway through her internet crapped out and I was still describing grids. And I looked around the grid, and if you watch the video, you'll see I go, Kim, where'd Kim go? And that's where they cut it. And then Kim and I did get back together and we finished talking about grids. We finished talking about some interesting new options I'm hoping to create for people who want to spiritually work with crystals to make it a little easier. A lot of people, you'll be new here because you haven't seen me work before. And I work with crystals. I work with a lot of different things. Today's recording is a finish up. I did the numbers 1 through 9 and I followed them through astrology, tarot, numerology, different elements, angel numbers, just to get people acquainted with how these number systems work and how in many ways they're the same. When you talk about twos, you end up talking about pairs and people that are together. If you are talking about, threes, it's building, it's the foundational things. But anyway, go back and watch the series. If you have a particular number you're interested in, go look at it because I do talk about different numbers and different life path numbers. Anyway, but I did say at the time that I would do the 22, 33, and 44. And then I got so busy doing all the other stuff I do, I forgot to go back and do 22, 33, and 44. So I'm going to do those today. And as many of you know, I have a wonderful book of oracle cards that are crystal oracle cards. This one, crystal reading cards. And I pulled a card for today, and it's Calcite, which is a stone of relaxation. And she has wonderful descriptions of the stones that I really like because it deals with them more on a metaphysical level, kind of like I do when I'm putting them into grids. And I lost my page because I took the card out. If you watch me very often, you'll see this goes on quite a bit too. Okay, calcite. Calcite. Calcite in medicine, in other words, energetically, is one of the most relaxing crystals because it resonates and amplifies the energy of inner peace and deep relaxation. When you connect with this powerful crystal, you're reminded to look within to find peace for the soul and path of relaxation. Open now and receive the medicine of that relaxation. And then it strengthens bones and skeletal systems. It deals with very internal organs, brings inner peace and tranquility, calms the mind, balances the heart, facilitates the state of deep relaxation, and that's basically what it does. When you get this card, it calls upon you to remind you to take some time out for yourself, to think about what you really need to do from all the intense energy of commitments. And this is perfect for me today because after I was on Kim's show, I opened up 40 emails with people who wanted grids. I'm going to do a separate little video that I'm going to attach to people when they ask for grids. I do not have a bunch of grids built behind me that are all put together. Each grid I build is built for you individually. That does mean, yeah, you do have to take time out and have a reading. You do have to contact with me. I have to connect your energy. Then you do have to make a selection of a card from the activation oracle cards and decide which energy we're going to work with. And then you leave it in my tender hands to take care of the rest of it. And when it's done, I will send you a picture of the finished grid, and then you pay the rest of the down payment. Back to calcite. Okay. Calcite's a wonderful stone and can be all kinds of colors. This is honey calcite. It's really one of my favorite calcites that I own. It's just gorgeous, and it does just look like a piece of honey that got locked up in crystal form. This is calcite, not as polished up, and it's a rough calcite. It is yellow, and it's really, when you see it in real life, it's a very vibrant yellow. This is calcite, and I use this a lot in grids because it's a great color. It's a green. There's also blue calcite. I don't think there's any color that calcite isn't. One of my favorites is ice calcite. It looks like a little chip of ice. It really, when you see them close up, they almost look like, why isn't that melting on the grid? And that's for clarity and amplification. When you get into which color a calcite is, you get into the sort of more or less the chakra colors. So the honey is for your sacral chakra, and the bright yellow is for the solar plexus, and the greeny one is for the heart chakra, and the crystal one is for the crown chakra if you're using it in that context. Sometimes I use it because it's a very angular but nice. You don't find it, you can find it tumbled, but a lot more, you find it more often in that rougher state. And anyway, so that's calcite, and that's the stone for the day, and it's to relax, and it's to help us find our way through this stuff. So let's talk about numbers. If you go back and look on my thing, you can find out how to figure out your life path. It's really very simple. You take your birthday and you add all those individual digits together. And if a lot of people add up and they go, oh, I got a 22, and they reduce it to a 4. No, if you get a 22, that's a very special number. It's called a master number. You have master numbers of 22, 33, and 44. I don't know anybody who writes about 55s because I don't think many of them, we've been energetically ready to accept them. So for 22, 22 becomes the master builder. And I know a little bit about 22 because I've given birth to a couple of them. They turn ideas into something concrete. They're capable of bringing it into this world, manifesting it into this world. It's a master number. It has very special energies. When you're around a 22, you understand I'm around someone who's special, and they can seem to just make things come together where others can't, which is part of their master number quality. If they don't use the 22, or if they don't use all of the energy and power they have to their highest good, then it will reduce down to a 4. But 4 is still not bad. It's building a strong base. And also it has the 2 in there twice, which is the number of cooperation. So these are the sort of master numbers that are going to get along with everybody. They're going to have the potential. They're more about their potential. Okay, when you have a 22 life path, it's more about the potential. It's not a prophecy. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm a 22, whatever I touch is going to turn to gold. You have to work. You have to use that potential up. But you have a kind of oomph in your life to help you move forward. Birth date, there's a birth date of 22. It equals same thing and reduces down to, it's the same people who have a birth date of 4, 13, or 31, because those all add up to 4. And if a 22 ties too much to the 4, too much to what I build and what I get and what I do, they end up being more materialistic than their spiritual side. 22s are less spiritual than 11s, which are also a master number, the 1-1. But their lives have an unusual message of peace and optimism. They can be very idealistic and tempered with, but their idealism is tempered with pragmatism. Sometimes you'll see people with life paths of 7, when they get in the really spiritual side, that they get totally idealistic and out there. But 22s have more pragmatism. They also have a greater love and understanding of humanity as a whole. Both of my 22s happen to be in Pisces, so they kind of have that anyway. But it's really, they really are more humanitarian. As as a life path and looking at the karma someone brings in, 22s tend to be very highly evolved, and they're working on some pretty complex ideas. And they live up to the title of being the energetic master builder. So that's what they do. There are, when you think about 22s, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and there's 22 statements in the totality of creation, and I cannot find out which religion that comes from. I've been looking, but if you know, let me know, please. Angel numbers. Angels see how positive results from your prayers. This is the angel number interpretation of 22. Be patient and optimistic with details while the details are worked out. In other words, it's let go and let God. Keep the faith and you will succeed. Okay. And so that's kind of 20. That's kind of how I'm wrapping up 22. 22 is a high master number. One of the first 22s I knew in adult form. Oh, when 22s are children, they function more from 4. They don't sparkle and look like the master spirit number they can be. They function from building a foundation for themselves. When they're in their good moods, they do. When they're in their bad moods, they're little turkeys to take care of, let me tell you. Anyway, master number 33, which I have not given birth to, but I had a roommate once who was a 33. He was a retired postal worker, which hardly seems like someone that would be a master number, but he was born in 1911. We shared a house when I was between marriages. He needed a place to stay, and I needed a roommate, and he was great with the kids. And he had been born in 1911 in Boston, Massachusetts. He went to grade school there, went to Catholic school there. He got an athletic scholarship to play at Notre Dame, play football. And he was on Newt Rockney's last football team. If you know anything about the history of football, he's a very famous coach in the early stages of collegiate football. Anyway, Callahan played on that team. And then when he got ready to finish school, he had been a linguistics major and I believe math major. And when he looked to what he was going to do, it was in the early 30s, he decided, it was in the early 30s, he decided he'd go into a monastery. So he went into a monastery, and he was in the monastery for about 8 years and realized that was a big mistake. So he literally escaped. In those days, you just didn't say, well, I've had enough of this singing and praying, thank you, I'm out of here. You had to escape. So he escaped. And at the monastery it was a true monastery. I mean, they had no idea, no newspapers, didn't know what was going on in the world. So he walked out into the Great Depression. And here he was, a man in his 30s whose entire resume was playing football and singing and praying. And he knew 5 languages, really good. So he started hitchhiking around the country and had some fascinating stories about walking through America during the Great Depression. And then World War II started. Well, in World War II, they didn't want to take men who were married with families. They took other people. But here they found a college-educated, singing and praying hobo who had no family. So he had no family that he was married to. So he got drafted. He was like in the first bunch of people that got drafted in World War II. And he ended up in the first real theater of war in Italy with, I think Mark Clark was his general. Anyway, he suffered a war wound, and as he was more than proud to show you, it was in his butt. So guess which way he was heading. And he would he'd talk about his days in the war. Well, when he came back, he landed in Boston and then ended up in New York, and he was and he was one of the first wounded veterans to come back. And he said that was all kinds of fun because all the ladies wanted to help the poor wounded veteran. Obviously, he was far away from his monk days at this point. And so at the end of the war, he kept doing things with the military during that time. But at the end of the war, he looked at his resume, and here he was, a guy who played football, knew a lot of languages, knew how to sing and pray, and knew how to shoot people. Um, not the world's best resume. So he went back into his Boston days, and he grew up on the streets of Boston in his Irish neighborhood with a guy named Tip O'Neill, who, if you, many of you are probably not old enough to remember him, but he ran the house. He was the Nancy Pelosi of his time. And Tip, he went to Tip and said, Tip, I need a job. And Tip said, oh, Paul, my old friend, sure. And he found him a job at the post office. So he carried mail till he retired. And I met him when he retired and moved to Texas. I never really understood the whole story about how he ended up in Texas, but he ended up being a very dear friend of mine. And like I said, we shared a house, and he didn't mind the kids, because my kids were in first and third grade, kindergarten, first grade. Anyway, he was a charming man, and he used to sit and read his novels in Greek to keep his languages up. And he taught my kids about prejudice. My children are now 45 and 43. He had a sign on his bedroom door that said, no Irish need apply. And my son one time asked him, he said, well, Paul, what's that about? And Paul said, well, your name is Sean, and you're Irish. And when I was a child, these signs were in the windows of every establishment that really paid a good wage, because they didn't consider us worth hiring, Catholic Irish. And Sean, who's Unitarian, was kind of going, whoop. And Callahan explained to him that, he had to walk past that, and what it was like to be in those periods of time. Anyway, some other day I'll do more Callahan stories. He also was a bootlegger for his older brothers, who used to make hooch in the 1920s. He used to ride with his little job purse, those funny little knickers on his, those kind of pants. He'd have bottles of booze tied to his legs, and he used to sell them at Harvard Yard. That's what he did to help the family keep going. That's a 33 master life. I mean, he lived a very good life. And at the end, he told me he ended up going and staying with a niece in the Northwest. And he didn't like it very much because it wasn't very sunny. But he told me that he wasn't going to do one of those heart attacks and do one of those dramatic deaths. He was just they were going to find him in a rocking chair with his favorite scotch beside him and his Greek book in his hand. And I talked to his daughter, his niece, after he died, and she said that's exactly what happened. He ended up needing to be in assisted care. He hated it. And one day he bribed one of his nephews to come bring him some scotch. And that's how they found him. The scotch glass beside him and his Greek book in his lap. And he was gone. So Paul was a very, very wonderful human being. Anyway, so number 33, most influential of all the master numbers, because the more the 22 is a great number, but it's a builder. The master number 33, it has honesty, compassion, and introspection, courage, and just sort of seems to live a blessed life. They have a high sense of devotion, and that makes being a good friend of a 33 an outstanding life journey. 33 can equal 6. If you put the 2 3s together, 6, but it's a higher vibration of the number 6. The number 6, if you've studied numerology, is kind of hearth and home, family, and harmony. And that's what these people want more than anything. They have massive spiritual power when they want to have it. And then there are also these 33s that are repeated through history, kind of impressing us with how important the number 33 was. Solomon's temple stood for 33 years. David ruled for 33 years. David in the Bible, King David. 33 sequences in our spine. Jesus lived 33 years. In Genesis, God is mentioned 33 times. In the Tree of Life, there's 22 paths, 10 globes, and one invisible globe called Doth or Saphiria. I think that's how you say it. I'm not really sure. But that means that there are 33 steps to wisdom. There's the 22 paths, the 10 globes, and then when you add in the invisible one, you get 33 steps to wisdom. Kundalini forces has 33 segments, and they claim that when you feel that tingling up and down your body, when your body just kind of, woo, I'm all connected, that's those 33 points segments coming together. 33s are avid seekers. Now, when I shared a house with Paul, I was 31 and he was 71. He was my age. And he was still out there trying to find stuff and learn stuff and do stuff all the time. And he's a very, very interesting person. They're highly sensitive to the needs of others. And that's where they can get tripped up. They can get so empathetic and so tied into what's going on with others that they get lost in those things. They have really high highs. They're kind of, and I'm not describing someone with true bipolar depression, but they get very, very, when they're excited, they're really excited. If they get bummered out, they go really low. And when they're in their negative form, they can use all of that power they have inside themselves to be controlling and to try to overtake and overrun their whole environment they're in. So that's the one thing you need to watch out for if a 33 is going in a negative direction. Okay. The number 33 in angel numbers means you have a strong, clear connection with one or more of the ascended masters who have answered your calls and prayers. And that's sort of the realm of good luck, of always being able to find a way to go, which they do. Now, 44s. 44 is all about business, because if you put 4 and 4 together, it goes to 8. 8 is the number of money and power. But 44 create on solid grounds what will be part of future generations. I've never personally known someone that was a 44 closely enough to see all this happen. But this is the energy that they claim is in a 44 life path. And once again, the way you find your life path is to add up the single digits in your birthday. And if it comes out to be a 44, then let me know, because then I'll know a 44. I just don't know any. You will have accomplished more than most, because you do ultimately come down to money and power. Commerce, technology, and politics are places where 44 shines. They have absolute confidence. They feel that they have destiny and the blessings of the world upon them, which, trust me, having worked with politicians, those characteristics are very important to make you get up and do, especially in the campaigning phase, to do that part of politics. They manifest everything into reality. They have lots of good outcomes around their lives where they thought about going here and then they managed to build it and make that happen. They are macro. They think in macro terms, not micro terms. It's like, someone might want to create a subdivision. A 44 will create a city. That kind of it. That's sort of the power that they have. They also could do great humanitarian things if they had it off to do that. But on the negative or the shadow side of a 44, they can be very manipulative, very bullying. They believe in bribes and bribing their way, because they don't see why they shouldn't have every shortcut they can find. And sometimes they think my best interest is everybody's best interest. I think we've all had 4 years of that. I won't go into that anymore. Anyway, the angels and how they work with them. Angels support them from the universe, and they can get maximum support when they're on the right side. If their energies are wrong, then they're going to be running against the energy of the universe, and they're going to be blockaded big time. Angels, the number 44 in angel numbers is angels are giving you extra comfort, love, and support. Ask for their help and listen to their guidance through your own intuition. And that's a good lesson for anyone else. I mean, if you run into the number 44 a whole lot in one day, just think this is maybe your money power day, your day to coalesce, your day to think in terms of macros, not micros, and your day to seek out the angels for help, and they're there for you. Of course, they're always there for you if you ask them. And I don't care whether you call them angels or energies or spirit guides aren't necessarily angels, but in my definition of the universe. But I don't care what you call the energy, but if you feel good, powerful energy motivating you, putting you in the flow and saying, go this way. I can tell you my word for this year, if you go back to the first of the year, I told everybody, pick a word. Pick a word that's going to be your word and think about that word periodically so that you can focus towards it. And mine was to flow, because when I started getting in the flow of working with the things I'm supposed to be working with and not fighting it and giving things a shot, uh, everything's just opened up and it's been a very different place for me to be in. And so my particular word is flow. People wrote me their words, and some of them were beauty, some of them were diversity, some of them were uh, completion, some of them were change, to accept change. I think change is one of those harder things for many of us to accept. Except if I'm in the flow, I have to accept the change because the flow is going to change things. Anyway, that's kind of what's going on in the garden today. Tomorrow's presentation is going to be on how to get a grid. And I know some people are drifting over here. I know it. I mean, they're not drifting, they're coming in a pile. Uh, and I welcome every person who's just subscribed. I welcome you to go back, because what I watched last night was a lot of people went back after they saw me and Kim and they got curious. They went back and started looking at my other videos, and they went through a lot of the different things. I'm sure they're trying to figure out, why is a crystal lady talking about weight loss? How can you carry rocks around and lose weight? Two different subjects, but really the same, because they have to do with staying centered and staying at the core of what you're doing. Anyway, if you are a 22, a 33, or a 44, you were born under a guiding star that's very strong and potent, but you have to use it. You have the potential there, but it's not prophecy. It means you can do this, but you have to work at it. It's not going to all fall in your lap. And like I said, think with calcite, go within, find peace and tranquility. I think today where I live is going to be very tranquil, because we're supposed to get like a foot of snow, and we haven't had a foot of snow here since 1983. So that'll calm the world down for a bit. And I look forward to you coming back and visiting. Like, subscribe, share my video if you think there's something in it that's worth it for another person to learn from. Uh, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. And once again, a big shout out to Kim, because her people are coming through and showing up. Thank you so much for being